and welcome. We shall be beginning our today's session. I welcome all our people, all our dignitaries, and special guests. Welcome to today's session. We shall be officially beginning the session right now. I welcome all of y'all on behalf of the Indian Chamber of International Business. A few lines about the chamber, and we are focusing mostly on small and medium companies headquartered in Mumbai and present all over India in about 8 states. Currently, we are having a presence in about 39 countries across the world. Membership base within India currently about 2,800 odd. We are majorly focusing on India's international relations, getting investments into India, expansion of Indian companies abroad, technical collaborations, joint ventures, and giving access to the world markets to Indian businesses. Not only that, we are also focused on the industry academic connect, and we also are assisting the academics to develop patents and work with the industry and commercialize the same. We also hope that in this initiative of ours, it will be a support system from the government, from the establishment, and we've been receiving all kind of supports for the same. Today's session focuses on India and Japan relations. We have today with us our esteemed guests, His Excellency Ambassador Sanjay Kumar Verma, the Ambassador of India to Japan, who will be giving the inaugural and the keynote address. This will be followed by the keynote address by Mrs. Archana Singh, IAS, Coming from Pakistan. Post which we should be having a panel discussion in which we would be discussing about the Japanese way of thinking as applied to manufacturing. We all know that them innovate and expand in levels that have been unseen before. We shall be having our panel speakers today for the session, Mr. Anand Prasad, he's the founder and CEO of Innovator Japan. Mr. Victor Burgers, he's the CEO and President at Leanworks Toyota Production Systems, and his experience in the Toyota. We also have with us Shri Santosh Mandlecha ji, President, Maharashtra Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Agriculture. Dr. Jitendra Joshi, President, Global India Business Forum, Business Head, Mahindra World City and Origins by Mahindra World City, Chennai. And our city partners, Osaka, Mr. Pham Thang Trung, International Affairs Department, IBPC Osaka, Invest Osaka, which shall be followed by the vote of thanks. I welcome all of you all officially to today's session. We shall be beginning by the national anthem of both the countries. Thank you, everyone. I would now like to invite our chief guest and the keynote address and inaugural address for the day today, His Excellency Ambassador Sanjay Kumar Verma ji, the Ambassador of India to Japan. Welcome, sir. Welcome to today's session of ICIB on the India and Japan Partnership Summit. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Singh. Ms. Ashna Singh from the government of Rajasthan, panelists, participants, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a great effort to sensitize smaller and medium enterprises about opportunities with Japan, which will probably go a long way in their strategic of relating and associating with the Japanese counterparts and companies. Let me start with something which is well known, but it needs to be repeated. We have excellent links with Japan, and that is very well reflected in institutions like Quad, in our own bilateral partnership agreements of different kinds, of the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, which is known as CEPA, and several more. Just in the beginning of this year, in January, we had 2 more agreements signed. One is known as SSW, which is Specified Skilled Workers, and the other one was on ICT. So the institutional mechanism exists for all of you to take advantage of and then start doing business with Japan. When I say business, it really doesn't only mean exporting to Japan, it could also mean importing from Japan of those commodities which we require, or products which we require. It may also mean technical collaboration with Japan. It may also mean financial collaboration with Japan. It may also mean the third country businesses with Japanese and Indian companies can join hands together for. So the canvas is very huge, and it all depends on your own strength, on your own SWOT analysis as to which vertical or pillar do you want to take on to link yourselves with the Japanese businesses. So the very first thing to understand is the Japanese requirements, Japanese culture of doing business. And these would be the first interface for you when you interact with any potential Japanese partners. How do you meet them? What do you talk with them? How do you take the discussions forward? When is the wait too long? When is your intervention considered as impolite? So all these things will have to be considered in the cultural milieu, and without which it will be very difficult to do business with a business society such as Japan. Language is another very important factor as far as Japan is concerned, because we have been used to doing business with largely the English-speaking countries and a few Arabic-speaking countries which also speak English. So English had been our main language of doing business, but when it comes to Japan, the main language of doing business becomes Japanese. And therefore, we all need to understand this particular factor and therefore try to reinvent ourselves as to how do we use Japanese language as an interface while exploring potential and possibilities in and with the Japanese partners.
So I request you to please unmute yourself.
So when you see India and Japan joining hands, you'll find that they have joined hands over multiple and myriads of platforms. And some of these platforms are actually economic and business related. So once you have understood the Japanese culture of doing business, then it will be much more easier to approach them. As it is true with the smaller Indian businesses or medium-sized Indian businesses, Japanese SMEs are also quite shy of going in the international market. So So wherever you hear about the Japanese companies, you will, most of the times, you will find that these are the companies which are well-known names globally, and they are big trading houses which hold hands of small SMEs. And these small SMEs do not come in the front to do business with the foreign companies. So therefore, the first barrier that you have to cross is the barrier of how to deal with SMEs. I'm very glad to share with you, and most of you would already be knowing about it, that JETRO, the Japan External Trade Organization, has its offices in India in various cities. And they could be your first port of call as far as Japanese businesses are concerned, who could do a bit of hand-holding for you in entering the Japanese market or looking for Japanese partners. Once you have got fixated on the Japanese association, Japanese linkages and Japanese partnerships, please feel encouraged to write to us so that we are able to give you our own advice on how to do business with Japan and what could be the possible scenario that you can look forward to. There are a lot of synergies and complementarities between our two countries, and one of them is not the cost. We, most of the time when I meet our SME industry captains, they would always come back to say that, but you know, we produce almost the cheapest in the world. Cheap does not always mean that you'll be able to do business in Japan. So the cost is a factor, but it is not the factor to do business in Japan. So what are the factors which would allow you to do business with Japan? The first one is trust. So trust building is extremely essential, and it takes years altogether to build trust. So if you are planning to do business with Japan, please consider investing in trust building, which will not only be investing in time, it will also be investing in probably patience and many more. Second part is that the Japanese partnerships are long-standing, which means that once you have entered in a partnership with a Japanese company, after satisfying and crossing the hurdle of trust, then it is likely to be a long-term relationship. Most of the Japanese companies will then consider you as a part of their family. And therefore, if you take a loss on your Japanese profile, chances are that they will be with you, standing with you on that. But at the same time, if they take a loss on their Indian businesses, they will also expect you to stand with them there. Because all these are long-term relationships, and therefore they look from this perspective. Third thing is quality. Fourth thing is quality. Fifth thing is quality. So quality is extremely important. And therefore, you have to produce the goods which are required by the Japanese market. It has to be certified in a manner which is acceptable according to the Japanese law for the Japanese market. So you'll have to look for the certification agencies which are mutually acceptable, or at least a Japanese certification agency which will certify your products to be acceptable in the Japanese market. And then comes the last one, which is predictability. Japan is a master in JIT, just-in-time businesses, and therefore they need the predictability of supply chain, they need the predictability of the quality, they need the predictability of the person with whom they are talking. So if you change the contact person very often, that also causes discomfort for your Japanese partners or potential Japanese partners. They would much prefer to interact with the same person over years and years for them to be understood better and for you to be understood better in the Japanese ecosystem. This is a country where people would have joined a particular company and they would probably retire from the same company. Company hopping is not considered as good in the Japanese society. Earning fat salaries is not considered good in the Japanese society either. So therefore, these cardinal principles of doing business with Japan will have to be kept in mind even before you start considering what product to be exported or what kind of association to be forged with the potential Japanese partners. Uh, the Japanese businesses are very physical driven. What does it mean is that you cannot expect a business to culminate on the basis of exchange of emails or on the basis of virtual conferences or video conferences or video meetings. They would like to see. They would like to understand where you come from. And therefore, during the COVID period, it has been very difficult to develop new channels to do business with Japan. I'm very sure that very soon the COVID we'll see the end of the COVID, and thereafter the physical travel will start once again, and it will open up new channels of doing business with Japan. So Japanese businesses are very physical as far as the SMEs are concerned. If you are considering doing business otherwise, then you have Sogo Shoshos, which are the large trading houses like Marubeni or Mitsubishi or Toshiba or even Toyota. They have got their own trading arms, and what they do is that they collate the orders of a kind and then they come to the Indian industry. But in their cases, SMEs are generally left out and they will directly reach out to the large. So that's very important factor. Whatever business you are planning to do with Japan, please consider the entire supply chain. How does supply chain affect you? Is the supply chain in your control, or the disruption of supply chain will also impact the predictability of quality and supply? It's a very, very important consideration, particularly in post-COVID situation where we have seen the supply chain disruptions causing havocs. Those of you who are not in physical products but virtual products, such as information technology related products, Japan is quite a good market for you. And you can look at various disciplines such as robotics, IoT, sensor technology, big data, data analytics, artificial intelligence, fintech, blockchains, largely related to digital currency. Technology is a major aspect in India-Japan bilateral relationship. So those companies which deal with technology, trade in technology, this market is for you. Those of you who are into the human resources businesses, we have signed internship training program with Japan, an agreement on that, and then another agreement on the specified skilled workers. They will be able to help you out. So if you would like to get more information on this, please get in touch with National Skill Development Center in India, and they should be able to tell you more about it. At the moment, we have some 30 such centers available in India who train Indian manpower for the Japanese market. Those of you who are in medium-sized industries, you'll have to very carefully consider your products and check out as to how are you going to get your certification done. Those of you who are into agriculture products, mangoes and other things, please very carefully check the PSP requirements, the phytosanitary requirements for the Japanese market. They are very strict. And please don't consider that if you are able to sell your vegetables and fruits to European or American market, you will also be able to meet the standards for the Japanese market. They are a bit different, more stringent, and requires a lot of paperwork. So please look at that. And if you need any assistance, any suggestion, any hand-holding from us, please write back to the embassy, and we will try to help you to the best of our ability in that particular case. COVID-19 has also opened up a new sector, which is the medical technologies, and medtechs are important in Japan, but it is not the same medtech that we talk of in India. These medtechs are largely according to the Japanese demographic changes, aging population, and therefore the products are mostly for aging population than anything else. And those companies who are well exposed to such technologies, assistive technologies and products may look at Japan as their possible markets. and take it forward. Those of you who are startups, there is a good news. There is a lot of sensitization of Indian startups already done in Japan, and many of the Japanese investors, not only financial, but technology, management, client base. So many of the Japanese partners and investors are looking at India for investing into startups. The total investment, which is just a guess, from Japan to India in the startup segment is close to $12 billion. And out of 27 unicorns in India, almost half of them have been funded by at least one of the Japanese companies. So the startup segment has got a huge potential when it comes to doing business with Japan. I always talk of three cooperative arrangements, and first of them is co-innovate, second of them is co-create, and third of them is co-produce. When I talk of co-innovate, it means finding a solution to a problem. Now, seemingly at the surface, problems may look the same in Indian society and in Japanese society, but when you deep dive, then you will find that they are not the same, and therefore the solutions may not be the same. So therefore, there is a need to co-innovate. Both the Indian companies and Japanese companies will have to sit together and then co-innovate the solution. Once you have been able to co-innovate the solution, then you have to co-create the project. After all, any innovation will need to be tested in the society in the real time. So that is the co-creation. Once you have succeeded in co-creating, either in India or in Japan or in both countries, or the product goes to a third country globally, then you are ready for co-production. And that is the time when the industries come together. So then it gets transferred from startup, which is innovation hub, innovation center, to a production center, which is largely the manufacturing industry. So if we are able to keep in mind these aspects of doing business with Japan, the possibility of succeeding is higher. Of course, there can never be a guaranteed success in any market. And we are here to do the hand-holding. I'm sure the Japanese embassy in New Delhi and JETRO's offices in New Delhi will be ready to do the same. With these words, I'll close my remarks, and I'll hope that I've been able to enrich your knowledge base on how to do business with Japan, and also open up some of the new channels of doing business with Japan. Thank you very much. Namaskar and arigato gozaimasu to my Japanese friends.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for that enlightening information. I am sure that this is the kind of information that the Indian businesses have been looking for to access the kind of market that Japan is, especially how you have clearly highlighted the importance of partnerships and collaborations, and how the Japanese look at a long-term approach and not only just the price. I mean, this is something that is really good news to the Indian businesses, Indian manufacturers. And, you know, this gives us a vision for the next 20, 30, 50 years. I mean, we take the example of some of the Japanese companies that we have been seeing that have been operating in India, which is very much in line with what you have enlightened us with. I would like to, sir, thank you so much once again to being part of this session and to assist us in getting the Indians and the Japanese to collaborate better. Today, we have a lot of Japanese companies and Indian operations of Japanese companies that have joined us for this meeting. And I'm sure that this is a new beginning for all the small businesses also in this segment. Thank you so much once again. It's been our pleasure to have you with us. Moving on, I would now like to invite our keynote address speaker and the Commissioner Industries and Special Secretary CSR, Government of Rajasthan, Ms. Archana Singh IAS. But before that, let us have a small video on Rajasthan and the investment climate of Rajasthan.
innumerable unique advantages. Companies locating in Rajasthan get a strategic locational advantage with access to large markets of the northern and western states. The state has one of the best highway networks in the country, providing easy access and cost-effective logistics and transportation of raw materials and finished goods. Industries located here are assured of reliable quality, uninterrupted power, with a high and increasing component of green energy. Rajasthan Industrial and Investment Corporation, RICO, offers industrial land in over 350 well-developed parks, a renowned country-specific zone for Japanese investors, and sector-specific industrial zones. The state was the pioneer in labor reforms in the country, and also boasts of numerous institutions of national repute, producing a vast pool of trained manpower. Rajasthan is ranked among the leading states in ease of doing business and also ranked number 1 on export preparedness among the landlocked states. The Rajasthan Investment Promotion Scheme 2019 is one of the most attractive packages of exemptions, subsidies and incentives for investors. The state's various sector-specific policies further facilitate and incentivize private investment in these sectors. Rajasthan has an effective single-window system for online submission, tracking and clearance of investment proposals, with the Bureau of Investment Promotion, BIP, as its nodal agency. Rajasthan is also setting up a path-breaking one-stop shop for investors. The facilities will have officers from 14 departments under one roof to facilitate time-bound clearances on investment proposals. A board of investment is being set up under the chairmanship of the Chief Minister for expediting decisions on investment proposals.
Just give us a minute. I think there's a technical issue. The state was the first in the country to implement the MSME Facilitation Act that exempts enterprises from inspection under any state law for 3 years. Rajasthan's Mukhyamantri Laghu Udyog Protsahan Yojana is one of the best in the country, promoting collateral-free loans to MSMEs and an interest subsidy of up to 8%. In sharp contrast to its perception of a desert land, the state is a leading provider of a variety of crops and animal products with high potential for value addition. Already home to large auto giants and over 100 component manufacturers, Rajasthan is also a promising location for players in this sector.
Already a leading solar power state, Rajasthan has set an ambitious target of 30,000 megawatts of generation capacity. It has launched a new solar energy policy and also has a wind and hybrid energy policy with unique facilities and incentives to facilitate investment. Rajasthan is a leading producer of non-ferrous minerals and is an ideal destination for companies involved in mining, mineral processing, and glass and ceramics manufacturing. With large reserves of cement-grade limestone, it is the most compelling choice for cement manufacturing companies. In proximity to the upcoming refinery and petrochemical complex in Bardmer, an industrial investment zone is being planned for related industries. A state home to over 70 million residents offers a variety of opportunities for investment in the healthcare sector. An attractive destination for players in the textiles and garment sector, Rajasthan is India's leading producer of polyester viscose yarn and synthetic suiting material. Low cost of operations and manpower make the cities of Rajasthan, especially the state capital, an ideal destination for IT and IT-enabled services. The state is also actively promoting investment in setting up of ESDM, MRO facilities and defense manufacturing. The land of rich history and culture also offers the most diverse bouquet of products for a traveler, as also for hospitality chains and businesses offering new tourism products. A new era is unfolding in the historic land. Rajasthan invites you to be a part of this unprecedented industrial and economic development and build a brighter future for its people.
Thank you so much, everyone, for patiently watching the video on our lovely state of Rajasthan. Rajasthan and Japan have got a very old connection that runs decades, especially with the Japanese clusters, the Japanese companies that consider Rajasthan their home. To highlight more on that, I would now like to invite our keynote address speaker, Ms. Archana Singh, IAS, the Commissioner Industries and Special Secretary CSR, Government of Rajasthan. Welcome, Madam. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much. I thank Indian Chamber of International Business for giving us this opportunity to interact and to showcase the business opportunities and the investment opportunities in Rajasthan. And a very good afternoon to His Excellency, Ambassador Sanjay Kumar Verma also. Like we had prepared this video because we felt that during these virtual interaction, it is very difficult to make people concentrate when we are having a monologue kind of thing. So we had this video so that all kind of investment opportunities that are available in the state are showcased. I would like to have a very small presentation on our ties with Japan, which have been long drawn. Japan was the first state, Rajasthan was the first state to have a Japanese zone, which is there in the Neemrana. So I would like to start my presentation on the same. So long back in the year 2007 itself, we have the Industrial Development Corporation, which is called as the RICO, which entered into a collaboration with the Japanese Association of JETRO. And the first industrial park for the Japanese industries was established in Neemrana in the Alwar district of Rajasthan, which falls in the NCR region. And since then, over 49 companies have started their manufacturing capacities in this area. And there has been an investment of over 5,800 crores in this region, and an employment has been given to over 16,000 persons. So almost 81% of this industrial area is already occupied, and there's still some land which is available here. The major industries that are present include Daikin Industries, Nissan, Nippon Steel, Mitsubishi, and the Toyota. Apart from this Neemrana Japanese zone, a second zone was planned in the year 2017, which is called as the Gilot, which is again around 16 kilometers from Neemrana, and it is in the district of Alwar, and it has around 530 acres of land available, which can be allotted to the Japanese industries on a direct allotment basis at a very low prices of around 3,000 to 4,500 rupees per square meters. So this kind of investment that has come in the Neemrana Japanese zone has also caused induced effect around this area, and there are certain industries like the Honda cars and the Honda scooters, which is present beyond the Japanese zone, and it is also contributing a lot to the state. So these are some of the leading companies which are present in the Neemrana. As you can see on the screen, most of these are the Japanese companies, and there are other major giants of other countries also which are present in Neemrana. Here in Rajasthan, we call Neemrana as the mini Japan, because this area has not only 49 companies are there, but the associated infrastructure is also there. You'll find restaurants serving Japanese cuisine, and if you'll go around in this area, you'll find a lot of people from Japan, and you'll feel that you have come to the some city in Japan itself. So this is it. I would now like to speak about the various incentives which is available to the investments which come to Rajasthan. I head a Bureau of Investment Promotion, which is basically an industry which handholds the investment proposals through their life cycle. Like once if somebody has some kind of idea also, they can contact us, and then we get through all kind of clearances that is required, get through the land allotment procedure, as well as in case subsequently also if some kind of issues come up, if some kind of problems come up with the various departments, we take it up with the various departments itself also. So there's this new RIPS scheme that has come up in 2019, which is a very lucrative scheme, one of the best in the countries, which has some general benefits which are available to the manufacturing and service sector, as well as there are several thrust sectors which have additional benefits available. The general benefits which is available to all kind of manufacturing and a set of service sectors is that around 75% of the state tax due and deposited for 7 years is reimbursed. There's an employment generation subsidy which is towards employees' contribution towards EPF and ESI, which is paid back to the employer. This is around 50% in general, and in case the employers, in case the employees are women, SC, ST, or the physically handicapped entrepreneurs, then there is 75% reimbursement against this head. And if there is a direct employment to domiciles of Rajasthan over 75%, then again the 75% of employers' contributions towards EPF and ESI is reimbursed to the concerned employer. Other exemptions that are available are the stamp duty exemption, that is 100%, and electricity duty exemption is also 100% for a period of 7 years. Then there is an exemption of conversion charges or change in land use, which is also 100%. And the land tax exemption is also available for 100% for 7 years. Apart from that, we have a set of thrust sectors, which include ceramic and glass, electric vehicles, ESDM, petrochemicals, and a set of service enterprises also, which come under the thrust sector. So these thrust sectors have additional benefits in form of capital subsidy or interest subsidy. There may be an additional benefit of investment subsidy or employment generation subsidy. So this is available to all kind of enterprises that set up in Rajasthan. And over and above of this, if an investment proposal is over 100 crores and it provides a direct employment to 200 employees, we have a provision of a customized package wherein an entrepreneur can give his request based on the kind of incentives they would like to have so that their business is more profitable. They give their request, we have a study on that, and then we put it up before the State Empowered Committee, which is headed by the Chief Secretary. And there are chances that the kind of request that he's making over and above RIPS also, those kind of benefits are also given to that entrepreneur depending on the kind of value his business is bringing to the state. So these are the general benefits that are available under the Rajasthan Investment Promotion Scheme. Otherwise, there is Mukhyamantri Laghu Udyog Protsahan Yojana, which is a scheme of the state government wherein a person who's taking a loan of up to 10 crores from any of the banks of the state is eligible for an investment or for an interest subsidy of 5 to 8% depending on the type of business or the type of industry that he wishes to establish. This is also one of the best schemes in the country, and in the recent 6-7 months post-COVID, we have been able to sanction interest subsidy against a loan sanctioned by a bank of over 1,000 crores. So it has taken up in a big manner, and Rajasthan is welcoming all the persons who are here. If you have any kind of business interest, please contact us at the Bureau of Investment Promotion. I am also heading the department as Commissioner Industries. The another agency which is very actively involved in investment promotion is that is the State Industrial Development Corporation, which provides industrial land, developed industrial land for businesses. And like I told you that we have 2 Japanese zones. One is already 80% full and it has some plots available. Another one is upcoming. So we welcome all of you, and kindly contact us if you have any kind of queries and if you have any kind of business interest. We'd be most happy to handhold and help you through. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam, so much for giving such a detailed information on the incentives that the state of Rajasthan is providing. I'm sure that even as Indians, many of us would have not been aware of such facilitation that the state is providing to the industry and to the manufacturing zone. I really hope that through this medium, we are able to get a lot of investments into the state of Rajasthan. Let it be manufacturing, joint ventures, and we shall try our best to ensure that we are as facilitators and work hand in hand with the state and the central government. Thank you very much once again, madam. It's a pleasure to have you with us. And I have been very fortunate, I must say, to visit Rajasthan and Neemrana in particular, and the Japanese zone. And trust me when I say that it feels as if we are not in India anymore. And so thank you to the government of Rajasthan for that, for giving that opportunity and to showcase what India has to offer. Thank you so much once again, madam. Moving on, we would now like to have a topic and a discussion on the theme of the Japanese way of thinking as applied to manufacturing. India and Japan, as we all know, go back decades, and some even say centuries. The relations between both the countries is so strong and at the highest leadership level. We have seen the engagements that the countries have been having with each other. The diplomacy that is going on in front and behind the scenes has ensured that both the countries benefit mutually and grow together in this new world order. Let us have today the views from Shri Santosh Mandlecha ji, President, Maharashtra Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Agriculture, to highlight a little bit on the chamber and also on what Maharashtra has to offer. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manpreet. First of all, I would like to congratulate the ICIB to have this kind of Indo-Japan Partnership Summit. On this occasion, His Excellency Sanjay Kumar Verma, Ms. Archana Singh from Rajasthan, and all the participants for this today's event. Very rightly pointed out by the Sanjay Kumar sir is that to have a trust between two the entrepreneurs. I think ICIB have done this fantastic job to have this kind of summit during this period. And another thing which has been mentioned by the Sanjay Kumar sir is that Japanese, they don't believe on email and everything. They believe in a physical meetings. I think this is a very rightly organized by you to have this meeting, and those who are getting a connection so they can have physical meetings. First of all, once again, I would like to congratulate Mr. Manpreet Singh Negi and entire team to have this kind of seminars. The Maharashtra Chamber of Commerce, Industries and Agriculture is working in Maharashtra since more than 9 decades. We are the facilitator between the trade industry and government of Maharashtra as well as government of India. We are a chamber of the state because we have in every talukas of Maharashtra we have a memberships. So we have direct membership, we have membership through our associations. We have around 450 trade and industrial associations. They are our members. Indirectly, we represent 700,000 members of entrepreneurs of Maharashtra. To serve them, this is a platform actually. Since last 4-5 years, we are doing a lot of efforts to have international connects between our members and the foreigners to have business opportunities. I think this summit is given immense opportunity to our members because a lot of inputs has been given by His Excellency Sanjeev Kumar Sir, as well as today only we came to know that what kind of opportunities in Rajasthan also to invest the good companies in Rajasthan also. I think ICIB and other states investment commissioner also should have this kind of seminars, so other options to the investors can be explored. I think this is a very good opportunity and this is very good efforts taken by this ICIB. As a Maharashtra Chamber of Commerce, we are always there to facilitate the investment which are going to come in Maharashtra, and those participants who are from Japan, we are very much interested to have you in Maharashtra. I think very rightly pointed out by His Excellency. So about the MSMEs, these MSMEs, they are having some reservation in their mind, and that's why India-Japan business, specifically in MSME, is not taking place. But I think with this platform and today's seminar, we would like to take this opportunity to explore the possibility how our MSME entrepreneurs can get a technology from these people. We have a capability of manufacturing, and now throughout the world, the Indian manufacturer, Indian MSME is being very well received with their qualities and capabilities. I think if we can have this synergy between these two countries, the technology which is having in MSME at Japan and the strength in Maharashtra MSME, if we can synergize it, properly netted it, then it will be a very win-win situation for all the business entrepreneurs. I think with this, I would like to conclude my remarks of this today's event. Once again, we would like to congratulate ICIB and Manpreet Singh Negi and his entire team to organize this program. Thank you very much.
Santoshji, thank you so much for being present here today with us. Moving on, I would now like to invite Shri Jitendra Joshi ji, the president of Global India Business Forum, to highlight more on the Indo-Japan relations and how the interaction can be brought more closer. Dr. Joshi, your views on the same, please.
Thank you so much, Manpreet. As Mr. Mandlekar rightly said, it's a really great opportunity for Indian businessmen to
Please continue, sir.
Hello.
Sir, we can hear you. Please continue.
Yeah. So it is very important nowadays that Indo-Japan, there are a lot of business opportunities coming up. I would like to first highlight that today's subject, which is a very important subject, that Japanese mentality of manufacturing. As we all aware that Japan is the instrumental to introduce, there are very good systems like Kaizen, Pokayoke, even the 5S. So all these systems, even the TPM, total quality management, see, all these systems are ultimately really useful for all the businessmen all across the world. See, if you can see in the 1980s, actually, many US companies have started in accepting all this technique. Even there are some hybrid techniques also been accepted, Japanese and US. But ultimately, as a result of that, many companies have started growing exponentially. As His Highness Mr. Sanjeev Kumar has rightly mentioned, if you want to do business with Japan and in Japan, what kind of product they will accept, the quality is the topmost important things in that. I want to highlight and share some figures with all the dignitaries here that around 64% of the import what Japan do, out of that, out of total 100%, 64% is from the Asian countries. And surprisingly, the India's contribution to import in Japan is just between 0.5 to 0.8%. And here, actually, we all really need to think about what exactly we want to do. So there are certain things that MSME has to grow. Now, Indian government is really doing nice work with the NSIC, for example, National Small Industry Corporation, and NSDC, National Skill Development Corporation. So MSME is definitely important for us, that not just the big companies, but the MSME should come forward and contribute in terms of exports in Japan. And for that, there are a lot of opportunity. What we can think, there are many, say, leather industry, clothing, ready-made garments, agricultural products, even the pharmaceutical products, auto component. These are the various opportunities now for the MSME sector to come forward. And Global India Business Forum, even the ICIB, like Mr. Manpreet, we all are trying our best that MSME sector businessmen, those who are contributing 50% of Indian exports, the mentality has to improve at that level, that we want to provide a quality service. For that, the packing, packaging, branding, even as Mr. Sanjeev Kumar rightly said, if you really want to do business with Japan, the language also is a thing. I think the stability is also because of the Japanese companies are keeping one-to-one touch with the individuals, even the stability in terms of employment, so that the person is not changing continuously his position, so that there will be more stability in terms of manufacturing process. The system has to run in a very systematic manner. So I think time has come now that MSME industry, we really want to go ahead. We can contribute a lot in terms of many things. The figures, what we see, the China total exports due to Japan is more than 23%. United States, 11%. Even Australia, 6%. Saudi Arabia is 3.8%. Why can't Indian MSME can contribute more in terms of number? And we have huge potential in India. And as our government, Mr. Modi also telling the Atmanirbhar Bharat is the Sankalpana, where actually MSME should come up. Global India Business Forum is one of the fastest growing business networking forum, and we are here to try to create the business opportunity for Indian MSME businessmen. As Mr. Manpreet, ICIB is also doing a great job to grow all such businessmen, those who really want to grow. And Mr. Manpreet, I am really thankful to you that you are creating a benchmark with this sort of webinar, that MSME, we should do a lot of training needs to be given for many other areas. And I think here my final remark is, even there are potentially, like mentioned Mrs. Archana Singh, many states in India have a huge potential for the investment for the Indian businessman. But MSME all across the India has a huge potential that they should start thinking in terms of that quality system what Japanese expect. And what is the final benefit out of it? When you reach at that benchmark level of quality, ultimately our Indian products will be there for export for globally, not just for the Japan, but all across the globe. And for the Indian users, I think this opportunity we all need to take up. So, Mr. Manpreet, I am really thankful to you for calling me for this webinar, and I am sharing my views for the same. Thank you so much for calling me. Thank you, sir.
Joshi, thank you so much for highlighting the specific techniques that the Japanese have given to the world. I mean, it is one of the things that, you know, the entire world reveres, like TPM, TQM, 5S, just in time. These are the things that Japan has given to the world. And thankfully, I must say, it is due to the presence of Japanese companies and the Japanese people who are very people-centric, who work on relations rather than just pure financials. I would like to really thank you for highlighting these things on the relations between India and Japan. Moving on, I would now like to invite our next speaker. One second. Yeah, I would like to now invite our next speaker, Shri Anand Prasadji, who is the founder and CEO of Venovator Japan, on his experience and how the Japanese way of thinking has helped him to put his base in Japan, and we shall be learning from his experience. Welcome, sir, to today's forum. ICIB is pleased to have you from Japan with us. Thank you, sir.
So thank you very much. I appreciate for that you invited me to the whole organizing committee, actually, for having me here. And I think the speakers before me already said quite important points. Maybe a little bit of background about me, and then I'll go to the few concepts that I want to bring in front of you. So in terms of Japan, I have been visiting the country at least for past 25 years and living here about 16 something years. And I have worked, maybe unlike most Japanese, I have worked in many different Japanese companies, starting from Uniden, Docomo, Rakuten Mobile, and also NEC. With these experiences, what I'll do is that I'll go through some of the points and some of the experiences that I have had while working in Japan and with India. So initially, of course, when I came to Japan, there were very few Indians, and currently now with time, respect for India has grown a lot in Japan and for Indian people. One of the cases that let me present you before I get to some other points is that in one of my job, we were doing, of course, some kind of offshoring software development in India. The cultural issue that was happening is that the product we needed to develop in Japan side, the requirements used to change regularly, but India side wanted it to be stable. And that became a continuous issue. So that is one cultural thing that happens in Japan, maybe unlike Europe and US, where you can have very stable requirement in one shot. At times, it can happen that you don't have a fixed requirement, stable requirement. It can change over time. So how to manage that? Yeah? How to continue development with that? With that in mind, the solution I thought of was that, okay, bring this culture of Japan and the given company, because each company has its own ways, to India. And for that, the means for me was to find a person who could understand both sides and was living in India. So that person, as said by His Excellency, our ambassador earlier, became a key point in India side and then a window in Japan for communication for a longer term together. Yeah, this long term and trust was built. What has happened with that company, that activity I started in the given company about 8 to 10 years back. Now the team in India has grown to over 100, doing software to mechanical and hardware, and also there's a manufacturing there in India of the company. Yeah. Just telling you the cultural thing in Japan, from relationship to quality, and then of course with the relationship comes the trust part as well. Yeah. Let me tell you another point as well. Back in, as mentioned earlier, back in my university days, I had heard a lot about quality and Japan. And in Japan, when you talk about quality, you of course cannot miss the word Kaizen. You have heard that earlier as well, which basically means that everyone in the company, and this is not only manufacturing, it comes in every part of Japan, in every activities in Japan, in all the companies that I have worked in, that everyone gets involved in improvement. And the improvement is towards the business. But the benefit is in many different sense. You know, small improvements, you do a small improvement, it leads to a bigger result for the business in longer time. Yeah. And with that, it's not just one person who is the head that is controlling and saying what to do, but everyone is involved, because the enhancement of the business, success of the business is success of everyone. It's not just one person that succeeds. And therefore, there is this long-term, you'll see in Japan, there's people are working quite long in Japan, and the company taking care of people. Yeah, that's another point. Company taking a lot of care of their people for education and enhancement. The other point in cultural side that I would like to say is, of course, the politeness and the harmony, which is very important. Every culture has a negative side. That's set aside. There is politeness, there is a harmony, how to work together, and there is being precise. Yeah, people like to be perfectionist in Japan. Any human being, you know, when we are born, we are told to walk like this, sit like that, and therefore we try to be perfect in that. But at some point we let it go. But in Japan, that's quite a lot of habit. I'll give you quite normal in day-to-day habit. Yeah. I'll give you again a couple of examples. Since I am quite well embedded in the society here, I had an experience of being in summer house of a friend, and where I next day leaving the place, I folded the futon. Yeah, that's and I ended up that the corners were not matching properly. I was corrected, and I had to fix that just to show to be perfection here in Japan in day-to-day life. Other example is that one local place where we stayed with all the friends, local families here who live around me, and next day when leaving, we put the bed sheets for wash. I thought I just put it like that, but everyone folded it very nicely and put it for wash. You know, it's just for wash, but still the perfection, the quality was very much there in the day-to-day life. So these are some of the key points I wanted to bring to you in culture. I'm just stressing what the people have said earlier. The Kaizen part of continuous improvement, removing the inefficiency with small bits of improvement, and then the other part is of course the trust building and relationship, which in long term certainly gives amazing results. If you can do that, and if you can carry out those things, then there is a lot of opportunity for business in Japan. And you're certainly welcome to discuss with me how I do my things and try to do my business here. Yeah, with these short remarks, I'll stop here. If there are any questions or discussions, it's most welcome. Thank you.
Dr. Anand, thank you so much. I mean, this is the kind of information that every businessman should take care of. You know, when you're wanting to work in a new territory, in a new part of the world, I think understanding is the most important part. The way of life, the culture, you rightly pointed out, the perfection in your everyday life that you've been experiencing, and that is something that we Indians should learn from your experiences. And when you want to work, I think the work comes later on, but the relationship comes first, especially when it is the Japanese. They have a way of living, they have a way of life, and I would like to call that the Japanese way of life. And that is something that we Indians should learn if we want to access Japan as a market for business. But definitely it is more on how you want to end up working together as partners, as family, and as long-term relations. So thank you so much, Dr. Anand, on your highlights. It's a pleasure to have you here. We shall be having the question and answer session in the end. I'm sure there are a lot of questions from a lot of people. Please be on standby.
Thank you.
We were now joined by Mr. Victor Burgos, CEO and President at Leanworks Toyota Production System from Tokyo. And just a little while ago, before the meeting, he was showing us the biggest and the most famous temple from Tokyo live, and we could see it. I'm not sure how many could see it earlier. Welcome, Victor. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hello, everybody. Yes, indeed, today I take my day off. So I went to visit with my wife because the cherry blossom is coming up. Sorry for my English, it's not good at all. So we saw some sakura, and also the temple was Kaminari-mon. That is the very traditional downtown of Asakusa. And now here in my back, you can see the sky tree. So I wanted to show you the old Japan is the Kaminari-mon in Asakusa, the temple. And then the sky tree, the newest one. So it's a mix in Japan of the old with the new, right? So it's very interesting how Japan it is. Okay, I heard many important people. Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor. Even I'm Mexican. I have 30 years here in Japan. I'm Japanese citizen. Heart is Mexican, but my brain is Japanese. And I'm a person of the war. I believe in all the religions. I'm a faith man. And then what say Mr. Ambassador, Excellentissimo Ambassador, and the businessman that I told, the doctor, what I can tell, and also the businessman told many things about Asia importing to Japan. I can tell if Japan participation import products, the most sharing biggest part is China, is because Japan teach Chinese how to work. And how is that? Is the Toyota Seisan Hoshiki, is the really Japanese way of thinking. That is the Toyota production system, TPS. And then, therefore, the American made it lean and many hybrid system. Okay, Japan is Japan. They are their own way. They are very respectful. They are very polite. But they are Japanese. They don't believe in God exactly. They believe in Japanese men. So it's very hard. They accept us as foreigners, even we are Japanese citizens, as a same as them. Legally, we are the same, but you will never get inside that. It's Japan. That is the strongest part of Japan. And it's good because it's a country we need to respect. And then the business opportunity. Chinese import very much to Japan because Japanese teach them the way of Japan, and that exactly is Toyota production system. It's a system, way of thinking. No waste, nothing. 7 waste, no waste, nothing. Because Japan doesn't have resource, only Japanese brain. And what is that? You need to improve, but you must have a mindset. You don't have money. Even you have to think you don't have money. You don't have people, staff, and you don't have time. In that mindset, you need to start improving. That is called Kaizen. Kaizen means every day you must improve necessarily everyone 1% every day. That's why it's free, right? You don't need invest nothing. The improvement you need to do every day, everybody is 1% every day. So in 1 year, you improve it 365% for free, right? Now you can multiply that for everybody in the company. And why you should focus in what? Quality. Quality, cost, delivery, safety, environment, and morale. But what kind of morale? I'm Catholic. I was born Catholic. So sometimes I look here in Japan, okay, we improved quality every day, 1%, good. We improved cost, reducing cost, wasted, right? Okay, good. We improved in delivery, the supply chain, right? We improved, good. We improve in safety too, 1%, good. But then we improve in environment too. No waste water, safe electricity, all that, right? But about M is morale. I'm born Catholic. These guys are not Catholic. So sometimes about Indian people are very spiritual. Western, we are logical. In Japan are methodical. Indian are more spiritual. Okay. So when I saw something's moral doesn't fit with me, as I was born Mexican, right? They told me, we are talking moral, but our moral is about how much are you motivated to work. Oh, big change, right? So it's not about I cheat my wife, I cheat my girlfriend, I cheat my partner, my man friend in the world. No, the moral for these guys is how much are you motivated to work. And then, as you can see, India is a powerhouse in Asia and in the world. Logically speaking, if you learn, if you adapt how to work the Japanese, is the only way you can get trust in these guys. Is the only way, working the way they are, you can be. It's very powerful. It's very powerful. That's why in Mexico, we are not as powerhouse as India, frankly speaking, but we are getting very stronger. Our secret is we learn from Japanese how to work as the Chinese. There are many Japanese companies in Mexico right now, and they teach us how to work. And that we are same as Indian. We are very passionate. We are very spicy. And then we use those tools how to improve every day 1% in quality, in cost, in delivery, in safety, and environment, and in morale, motivation. Very strong, very powerful. So you guys, India, you have a lot of potential to be the biggest powerhouse here in Asia and in the world as well. Competition with Mexico, because you have many people, you have faith, you have culture, very strong. Now you need, as I say, the Japanese are methodical. If you adapt that method to you, the method I'm talking about is you are very powerful in anything you want, in business, in technological, in quality, cost, delivery, safety, moral, environment, and motivation. Motivation, I mean, very strong for go work. Okay, that is my opinion. That tools are very basics. Everybody knows it. First of all, everybody has problems. So the tools I learned here in Japan, working for Toyota inside a shop floor. Even I was a trainee, elite from Mexico. I started in the shop floor cleaning machines. I made my career there. There are tools, very basics. You know about how to find the root cause. The diagram Ishikawa, the fishbone, invented here in Japan, in Tokyo, University of Tokyo. How to find the root cause of your problem. Once you localize the root cause, you need to think how to solve it. How to solve it. And then it's a methodical way to make a plan, a chart. Gantt is an American or British one. It's a chart. Gantt is to make a plan. And then you have the evaluation of the results, and that's it. So it's only 4 steps to work like Japanese. And to get inside the Japanese, the only way is to get that trust on these guys is working like them. An example, Japanese come to Mexico, they love us? No, they want business. Okay, they teach us how to work. We made better job than them because we, like India, we have a lot of young people, very much. We don't have population problem. And we are fighters, we like spicy, we work hard, like Indians. And then we have the method. Now we can compete and even surpass them. I think I'm very excited to be invited here because I went to India so many times to collaborate with my Indian team, with many companies that were in India, German companies in India, to share my experience with my brother Indian, how to improve, how to give maintenance, how to take care quality, cost, delivery, safety, environment, and be motivated every day. I think I talked a little too much. Thank you everybody for their important time. Anytime I'm free, when you need talk or something, make questions, collaborate, or advice. I don't say that. I think share. Feel free to do it. I'm very happy Mr. Manpreet invite me and to share, to be with you, my Indian brothers. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you so much for enlightening with your experience as a Mexican in Tokyo and Japan, and your decades of experience with Toyota and working right from a trainee level right to the top of the Toyota companies. Thank you so much for being with us. It's a learning experience. I'm sure a lot of people will have a lot of questions for you. Looking forward. Thank you so much. Thank you, Victor, once again.
I'm here. Thank you very much. Namaste.
I would now like to invite our next speaker for this discussion. Shri Param Kalraji is the co-chair at Punjabi Chamber of Commerce. Paramji, welcome to today's session. Indian Chamber of International Business is happy to have you with us and to hear your views on the Japanese way of thinking and the India and Japan relations. Paramji, the floor is yours.
Mr. Manpreet Singh, it's a privilege to be here in all these esteemed speakers and people from all over the world. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I definitely do not belong to a background who works with the Japanese already. But yes, we have this amazing community of Punjabis worldwide. I'm representing Punjabi Chamber of Commerce here today. And this is a community of agile Punjabis all around the world. Nothing religious and political, but yes, boosting entrepreneurship, culture, and commerce among various Punjabis. So we are a community of innovators, attorneys, doctors, startups, entrepreneurs, and professionals. And the major agenda being business and commerce access to the worldwide Punjabi community. So this does not confine us only to the Punjabi community, because the basic pillar of PCC is being non-political and non-religious. But we are the largest organization of Punjabi business and professionals around the world. Personally, I am founder of Startup Nation. We are a co-working spaces and incubator company in India, based in Chandigarh, which is quite north of Delhi. And we are expanding in tier 2 cities here. And I've been working with a lot of startups lately in the last 7 years. We work closely to more than 100 startups in Chandigarh region and around. And listening to all the amazing views that I've got from esteemed speakers here, and of course, His Excellency, Mr. Ambassador, I think Japan has a great pool of things to offer to Indian startups and entrepreneurs. Because Indian startups, as you've seen in the last few years, they've been performing very well, and we've seen quite a lot of unicorns in the Indian ecosystem. And Japan has something that Indian entrepreneurs can really benefit from. First of all, being the tech background. And I think that's amazing how Japanese companies work, and the culture that we've listened from these esteemed speakers. So I think there's a great deal of collaboration requirement with Indian startups and entrepreneurs in terms of India-Japan relationship. Be it tech, be it investments. We've already seen a lot of investments coming in from Japan to Indian startups and entrepreneurs, but I think there's a lot more to be done. And after, as the last speaker just said, they actually teach China how to work. So I think there's a lot of import capability that can be done from Japan, and a similar collaboration for all these small, medium enterprises and startups in India. I won't say much because I'm really delighted to be here already, and I would request Manpreet Singh ji to keep this collaboration in future as well. We would love to see such dialogues, and it was very informative of me being here. And in terms of Punjabi Chamber, if you feel like you need to connect with Punjabis worldwide, it's a great organization. I'll share the website that we have so that you all can have a look on what Punjabi Chamber of Commerce does, and maybe we can find out possibilities, because I'm sure there should be a lot of possibilities working together from here. And yeah, that's it. And thank you so much for having me here, Mr. Manpreet. I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
Paramji, thank you so much for your views and on the community as a whole. So my personal thanks on that part. And it's definitely a pleasure to have you and the Chamber, Punjabi Chamber with us in this session. Looking forward to further interactions with you. I would now like to invite somebody who has been having the actual experience of working with Japanese individuals and Japanese companies in India. I would now like to invite Shri Vaibhav Mittalji, Business Head, Mahindra World City and Origins by Mahindra World City, Chennai. And from the Mahindra Group, their experience with the Japanese and how they have been working since decades with the Japanese companies and giving them red carpet treatment in India is something commendable. Vaibhavji, the floor is all yours. Welcome to today's session and welcome from ICIB.
Thank you, Manpreet. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, early good evening to Japanese colleagues and friends. His Excellency Ambassador, good to see you here. Good evening to you as well, sir. While sitting in Chennai, I tried to bring a bit of a Japan at the background by putting in a Kinkakuji temple at the background. I thought that'll give a good glimpse in terms of, even the plants and the trees in Japan are very well manicured and completely cut to the exact size aesthetically, and that's the level of precision which probably the companies also build their products in. But today's topic, which has been given to me, is very pertinent and it's very interesting topic. And I'm going to talk a bit on Make in India and Make for the World. And I think looking at the new normal after the COVID has hit all of us, I believe that we are actually in an era where a lot of companies, including Japanese companies, are definitely looking at newer locations for their businesses and looking at how to enhance their production capacities, global supply chains, as well as connectivity to the rest of the world. So before I start that, if I can just spend a couple of minutes on what we do and how I am connected with it. I represent Mahindra Group. Mahindra is a close to around $20 billion, very diversified group here in India. We have multiple relationships, with the Japanese companies, and I represent the industrial parks and industrial zones division of Mahindra Group. We have 4 projects currently being developed in India. One in Jaipur, which is called Mahindra World City Jaipur. That is our largest project. We have one in Chennai, which is the oldest one, called Mahindra World City Chennai. And we have 2 industrial clusters by the name of Origins by Mahindra World City. One in Ahmedabad and the other one is in Chennai. The Chennai project, Origins Chennai, is also in joint venture with Sumitomo Corporation of Japan. So we have a very strong relationship, working relationship with the Japanese companies over a period of time. And Origins Chennai is also one of the official Japan industrial townships declared by Government of India and the Meiji Ministry of Japan. So from that point of view, it actually contributes a lot in terms of seeking new investments from Japan and setting them up, within India, with a focus on the Chennai side of it. But this story is not about Chennai or Jaipur or about Mahindra World City. That was just a small beginning. In my, years of experience with dealing with the Japanese companies and Japanese, investors in India, one of the important things which has come out to our focus is the consistency they need in the policies and the ease of doing business, which every one of them require and demand. So from that point of view, I think India has leapfrogged a lot over the last 5-6 years. And there is a lot of, focus, as well as there's a lot of now, I should put it, confidence in the Japanese investing community when it comes to ease of doing business within India. The exchanges between Japan and India said to have begun in the 6th century when Buddhism was introduced in Japan. And from that point of view, the relationship has only gone and increased from strength to strength. India is the largest recipient of Japanese ODA, that is Official Development Assistance. Multiple projects are being, covered by the, especially in the infrastructure sector, are being funded by the Japanese ODA. And the most popular one and the most notable one is the Delhi metro system, which was completely set up through the ODA development assistance, which we got from Japan. I think Japan has played a very, very strong role in terms of overall development of India, as well as, the manufacturing system of India. If I step back and look at, how the 80s were, we were still living in the era of our old world automotives. And that's when the Suzuki was introduced into India, which brought in a revolution as far as automotive industry is concerned. Whether we hear about Kaizens or dampenings or, the Toyota way of working, I think all of them came around the same time. And that's how the global supply chains, or rather I should put it, domestic supply chains started to build. And I believe that a single most contribution of Suzuki has been in terms of making Indians understand what a quality manufacturing can be and what it can bring in onto the table, both in terms of efficiencies as well as in terms of cost. The other important thing, which is, very important for us to look at from a Make in India point of view, is that there are currently top 5 sectors which are attracting a lot of FDI from Japan. Automotive, drugs and pharmaceuticals, service sector, including startups and IT and ITES, metallurgical industries, and telecommunication. I personally feel that there's a whole lot of scope in terms of doing much more. We know that Japan is very strong in medical devices. I think the way the government of India has put it, medical devices is one of the focus sectors for us. So I think Japan has a great opportunity to invest in the medical devices sector of India, which is, by the way, one of the most well-developed ecosystem in the world. We are already a vaccine capital of the world. We manufacture, we are the pioneers as well as the leaders in terms of manufacturing vaccines. But, in the medical devices, we have the global standards and some global companies which are located here. But the whole ecosystem is still open for the Japanese companies to come and set up their operations. The Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, SEPA, which was, which intends to, eliminate tariffs at 90% of the products, which are exported to India from Japan. This includes, both auto parts and electric appliances. I think these are some of the important sectors to look at as far as India is concerned from a Japanese point of view. Some of the current projects which are, very interesting from a Japanese ODA point of view, which opens up a whole lot of opportunity for the Japanese companies in India, include the Chennai-Bangalore Industrial Corridor. I think that is one of the fastest developing industrial corridor in the country right now. It's a roughly around 450 kilometer industrial corridor, which is going to be developed in a phased manner. The development assistance from Japan is one of the important pillars of that particular development. The other one, very, very important for India and for the industry in India, is the Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed rail. I think that is something which is opening up a whole lot of opportunities for the Japanese companies to come and set up the operations in India, invest in India, and make India a global hub for their manufacturing, their product manufacturing. The other one which is important is the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor. This was the first corridor which started to develop in India, and from that point of view, this is a project which keeps on giving a whole lot of opportunities for the Japanese companies. We heard from Rajasthan about the Neemrana Industrial Zone. I think Neemrana Industrial Zone was the first industrial zone as part of the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, which got set up through the Japanese investments which have come in over there. There's a very strong and sustained relationship between India and Japan, and I think that is something which we can very clearly focus upon. One of the recent surveys from JETRO, was that close to around 40% Japanese companies were keen on investing in India before the COVID hit us. And after the COVID, I think that has gone down drastically. And so from that point of view, it is started to show up again. But I think as the travel increases, as the people-to-people contact go up, we will see a surge in numbers again, from currently at around 6 to 9% to again going back to around 30 to 40%. There is an increase in requirements, increase in demands, as well as increase in inquiries, which we are facing and which we are seeing in our industrial parks from the Japanese investments. And I feel that it is something which we will continue to receive. Now, India has been a gateway to the world. India is traditionally a very clearly a blue economy. If you look at India, the location is such that we have sea on all the sides. And we have sea on the three sides of the country actually, and we have been connected to the whole world since time immemorial. I mean, most of the invaders came through the sea and looked at us as a potential land of opportunities for them. And from that point of view, I think the relationship between the government to government as well as people to people have developed over a period of time in India and Japan, and it has gone very, very strong. The recent conversation between our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, and the Prime Minister of Japan, Mr. Suga, was a very, very interesting conversation which lasted for around 40 minutes. It was a precursor to the Quad meeting which recently happened between US, Australia, Japan, and India. And I think as part of these 40 minutes conversation, apart from what was discussed strategically, there was a lot of emphasis on building better people-to-people contact, building better business-to-business contacts, and also to once again confirm the strategic relationship which we have with Japan. So I think that is a very, very strong statement coming in from both the government side of it. With the global supply chains now shifting, and there's a whole lot of focus on India, both from the European side as well as from the Japanese side. I think we are all set to see a surge in Japanese investments, over the next few years. What we heard is that there are close to around 200 Japanese companies which are keen on coming into India, and I'm sure His Excellency's work is going to get very, very difficult to see these companies coming into India. We are always there in terms of ensuring that there's a complete peace of mind when they come and invest in India in any of our locations wherever we are located. Apart from that, COVID-19 itself has opened up and thrown up newer opportunities for these companies to come and set up. As I said, medical devices and medical related, manufacturing is going to increase by the day, and that is something which opens up a whole lot of opportunities for the Japanese. The other important, decision which Government of India has taken, and that is for the global companies to take real advantage of, is the production-linked incentive scheme. So the PLI scheme, which the Government of India announced, look at 13 very key strategic sectors, and that is something where India is inviting a whole lot of investments, from the world to make India as a global factory and the global, supply chain destinations. And that is something where, the Japanese companies have a large opportunity to play and come and set up their operations. In fact, DPIIT, which is the Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, has spoken several times about the very strong collaborative relationship between India and Japan, and they have actually re-emphasizing and focusing on Japanese investments when it comes to India. I think currently India has close to around 4,000 Japanese companies. The total population of Japanese expats living in India is close to around 11,000. And I think there is a whole lot of potential to increase and go up. We are still nowhere closer to what the Chinese and even a smaller country like Thailand has in terms of Japanese investments. But I think one of the very strong parts which we have is that we have both the domestic requirements as well as the ambition to be connected to the world, which opens up a huge round of opportunities for the Japanese companies to come and invest. The 13 key sectors which have opened up include the traditional automotive sector. Apart from that, renewable energy is another very, very interesting sector where Japanese can invest a lot of money, in India. and they will actually have a lot of subsidies coming back. Apart from this, all the state governments also provide a whole lot of opportunities and incentives to the companies. So from that point of view, I think India is the place where we look at Japanese as a very, very serious investors, and we invite them to come and set up their operations. We at Mahindra World City and Origins Chennai are always eager to help and handhold all the companies which come in. Close to around 160 companies currently operate in our 4 industrial parks from 20 plus countries, including Japan. And currently in Origins Chennai, which is the Japanese industrial township, we have 3 large Japanese companies already set up their operations, and we are already in touch with another 2 to establish their operations in the park as well. Apart from that, being a Sumitomo and Mahindra Group joint venture, we have the Japanese expats and others who are sitting on board, so that the complete experience is complete end to end. So from all these point of view, I think I'll close the discussion over here with the last point, that I think the time for India to be part of the global supply chain has come. It can't get better than now. And Japanese have to take up this particular opportunity with both the hands, so that they are not left behind as far as investments are concerned and some of the important critical sectors are concerned. And this is, I believe, what the friends do. So we have a very strong relationship, and I believe that through the investments and more people to people and business to business contacts, we are only going to see this friendship and this relationship grow further. Thank you so much, Manpreet, for your time and patiently hearing me. I am open for questions whenever time permits. Thank you so much.
Vaibhavji, thank you so much. And the figures that you've highlighted, the percentage, that shows how much more potential we have and how much we can grow. And I'm sure you are aware, we've tried to facilitate some meetings of Japanese investors with Mahindra World City, and there's still a lot of interest. The Japanese companies and the Japanese people are very much interested in the India story. They also are aware, like our Honorable Ambassador mentioned right in the beginning, that it's all about relationship, it's all about people, it's all long-term approach. Similarly, Japan and Japanese companies have been in India since decades now. This embodies a lot of trust, especially when it comes to the Mahindra World City and yourself, your interactions with the Japanese people. That definitely adds a lot of value. You clearly mentioned the Japanese people on the board of the companies and how that helps to facilitate the language barrier is overcome, and that does help a lot. I wish you all the best, sir, and I hope that India and Mahindra World City can get a lot of Japanese investments into the manufacturing sector, and we utilize the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative of our Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister Shri Modi ji. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks, Andre.
I would now like to invite for just a few minutes Shri Shubham Nuwalji. He is our convener for Rajasthan. If you can just introduce yourself, that will be really nice. Shubhamji,
yes,
are you around?
Yes. Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Shubham Nuwal. A warm welcome to all the respected panelists and Honorable Sanjay Kumarji, Archanaji, and all other respected members. It gives me immense pleasure actually to be a part of this India-Japan summit focusing Rajasthan, as I born, brought up and belong to Rajasthan. So I'm very thankful to Manpreet ji to give me this opportunity to take this portal online. Also, just to give you a brief about Rajasthan when it comes to different sectors, like tourism, power generation, as everyone mentioned, through solar and wind, mining, agriculture, education, textiles, cement, handicrafts. There are tremendous opportunities where we can focus to invest in Rajasthan. Also, there are few things I want to highlight for the investing in Rajasthan. As Rajasthan, out of 44 identified economic corridors in India, more than 8 corridors passes through the state of Rajasthan. And what makes this opportunity to invest in Rajasthan, as we were talking about, Neemrana is a great success. So, there was like the Japanese park, which was settled in Neemrana. there was a lot of buzz between Delhi and Rajasthan government to create a special railway, metro line for the extension from Delhi NCR to Neemrana further. So I would just like to close my statement over. Let's take these two countries together on a common platform to explore further synergies for investment and trade in the state of Rajasthan, Manpreet ji. And we'll take it further with your guidance and everyone's support, and especially Government of Rajasthan. Archana ji, thank you.
Shubham ji, thank you so much. I'm sure with your presence there, it's going to make a lot of difference. Thank you once again for being with us today. I would now like to recognize the presence of a few dignitaries that are attending the session with us here today. Japan is so interesting that we've got people joining from the government of Afghanistan. We have people joining from Bangladesh. We have people joining from Mauritius. And I would like to recognize all these dignitaries. Also, the president of the Indo-Latin American Chamber of Commerce, Shri Raj Sharma ji. Thank you for being with us today. I would now like to invite for the last session for today from Osaka to the World by Mr. Pham Thanh Trung. He's the International Affairs Department, IBPC Osaka and Invest Osaka.
Hello, this is Pham from Osaka International Business Promotion Center. Our organization exists to promote Osaka economically and socially. From now on, let us introduce our own city, Osaka, and its nature. Osaka is internationally renowned. We won many international rankings, such as the Most Livable City and Safe City Index, as you can see on this slide. These companies and products are originated from Osaka. You may be familiar with some of them, right? So this is the basics of Osaka. We have around 3 million in population, 0.1% of Japan's land area, and 180,000 companies reside in the city. This means we have almost 800 companies per square meter, which means we have high business concentration. From the table, we can learn that Osaka Prefecture has an economy bigger than Hong Kong and Israel. Osaka City's economy can rival Vietnamese and New Zealand's one. I'm from Vietnam, and the fact that the city is as strong as my country is quite astonishing. This slide shows 5 strongest industries bolstering Osaka City: wholesale, service, IT, manufacturing, and real estate. This means we have strengths in conventional industry. These industries are going to be boomed further as collaboration with advanced technology and startup companies become more active and widespread. Aside from existing industry, there are several booming industries worth mentioning here. Before COVID-19, Osaka Prefecture had 26 million visitors in total, which is the second largest numbers internationally in 2019. We are putting our maximum effort to revitalize this so as to have another boom after the pandemic. Osaka also has strengths in medical, life science, energy, and the creative field. Conventional industry and booming industry combined, gathering a strong economy to the city. Business can enjoy lower business cost in comparison with Tokyo. In some circumstances, you can rent at half price or even below for a property with same condition. Labor cost, a large burden on a company's organization, is 20% lower in Osaka. Given the market size, the scale of economy, and its dynamism, Osaka can be valued as a city with an excellent cost performance. Education makes a big difference in a city, and Osaka, Kansai are good at it by virtue of well-organized educational infrastructure. As many as 217 higher education institutes are situated here, which support all internationally renowned universities such as Osaka Uni and Osaka Prefecture Uni, or Osaka City Uni as well. Those who educated here has shown brilliant performance in many sectors, which have bolstered Osaka's economy's strengths. Geographically speaking, Osaka is the area these talents tend to concentrate and work in. Many internationally renowned companies reside in Osaka because of ease in employing these people. And in Osaka, you can enjoy an excellent international and domestic access. You will be connected everywhere in every continent via Kansai International Airport. Also, you can go everywhere in Japan by utilizing public transportation. So this is what we can do. We can provide free consultation on business establishment. We can refer you with government officials and specialists in many fields. You can use our free office up to 6 months, and we will find your office space later on. We will help you in life-related issues such as school and hospitals. And last but not least, we can provide business matching if you need. So this is the end of our presentation. Our material will be provided to you later, so please feel free to contact us. Nice to meet you. I'm Fan from Osaka International Business Promotion Center. Thank you very much.
Dear Fam, thank you so much for all this information on Osaka City. What was the most interesting for me and for any other Indian, I'm sure, is the 6 months of free office that Osaka City is willing to offer Indian companies to establish their presence, and later on also, assist in finding the office space and for the business matchmaking. Thank you so much. I am sure, including me, a lot of us would be willing to cash on that option. And thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have all of you here. I would now like to open up for any questions. The Honorable Ambassador of India to Japan would be leaving. So just 1 or 2 questions if anybody would like to ask. I am unmuting everybody. I request everybody to please either raise your hand, introduce yourself, and ask your question. Please be very brief and to the point. If any questions do we have for the Honorable Ambassador? Okay, we have Ms. Khushru Pastakia. How do we track out potential Japanese healthcare companies who would be interested in JV with Indian companies? Khushbuji, can you tell us whom you have directed this question to?
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah. See, basically, we are into manufacture of in vitro diagnostic testing kits, and we would like to explore how to find out any potential partners from Japanese side who will be interested in making investments in India for such setups, like in the form of a JV. And this is, of course, for the question is for the person who can address this from the Japanese side. It has to be an embassy.
I think we shall assist you with the commercial section of the embassy, and we shall assist you to connect with them, and they can answer this in detail. As this is a very specific question with healthcare, I am sure they would have to find the right partner for you. We shall take it up.
I sent one email regarding this yesterday to find out this, but I have not received any response from the other side.
Manpreet Vaibhav here. If I can
Vaibhavji, please.
I can just briefly reply to that question, though I am not aware completely, but I know a little bit of it. So there are 2 associations in Japan, one is the Japanese Medical Devices Association, and the other one is Medical Healthcare Association, which is run by the Japanese companies, which you can, which you can definitely reach out to. Both of them are located in Tokyo. The commercial section of the embassy will help you connect with them. The only problem which you're going to face is these are 2 internally looking organizations, so the language will be a bit of a challenge. So you'll have to be very, very patient with the Japanese. The second is going to be as much as possible try and communicate in the Japanese language, both in email as well as in terms of your communication. So I think that will be helpful. His Excellency is here if you can
The first one is Japan Medical Device Association, and the second one, what you said was?
Is also the Japanese, Medical Healthcare Professionals Association.
Medical
They will give you
Healthcare
some.
Professionals. Okay.
Yeah, ambassador is here, so we'll wait for him.
Fine. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Just one more input. Why don't you just go across to the JETRO office, register yourself, and tell them what is it that you are looking for. Most of the Japanese investors who would be going to India, they will have some kind of link, association, consultation with JETRO India. So
sounds perfect. Sure.
It will be useful because, when we go to the entire association, we are still not very sure if anyone is interested in investing in India. But if you go to JETRO India offices, they will have some lead on which Japanese companies are looking forward to JVC.
Appreciate that. Sounds perfect. Sure. Thank you very much.
Any other questions that you might have? Anyone else? You can feel free to send us these questions by email. We shall direct it to the concerned authorities, and we'll be happy to help from the Indian Chamber of International Business. I guess that's it on the questions part. I would really like to thank all of you for taking out time today and being part of this session. We've had people from Japan, we've had from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Mauritius. Thank you so much for removing your valuable time. I really thank Mahindra World City and Origins by Mahindra World City for powering today's session, our state partners, the Government of Rajasthan and the Bureau of Investment Promotion Rajasthan, our valuable partners in progress, the Indian Embassy of Japan. Thank you, Honorable Ambassador, for removing your valuable time and being with us here today. City partners, Invest Osaka and IBPC Osaka. Our partner chambers, the Indo-Latin American Chamber of Commerce, Punjabi Chamber of Commerce, Global India Business Forum, Maharashtra Chamber of Commerce, and IBG Business Group. I would really like to thank you all for being here with us today. And thank you so much for your valuable expertise. All our speakers that removed their time for being with us and explaining their experience between Japan and India. Dr. Anand Prasad ji, Mr. Victor Burgess, Santosh Mandlecha, Jitendra Joshi ji, Param Kalra ji, His Excellency Ambassador Sanjay Kumar Verma ji, and Ms. Archana Singh ji IS. Thank you so much for being with us today. And special thanks to Vaibhav ji and to Pham Trung for joining from Osaka. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being with us.